In closed-door briefings, military leaders explain aerial strikes on a drug boat where survivors were struck and killed. A Republican calls it righteous, a Democrat troubling. An arrest in the Capitol pipe bomb case the night before January 6, 2021. The suspect found just miles from D.C. The FBI says there were no new tips, just harder work on existing evidence. And if you have Spotify, I mean, like, who doesn't? You just got your Wrapped for 2025. So what's the wrap on musical tastes in Congress? We're going to let you know. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. The explanations from President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth have been at times vague and halting. Hegseth even invoked fog of war as a cover for blurry details. That left Congress to call on military commanders for clarity about what happened on September 2nd off the coast of Venezuela, when numerous U.S. military airstrikes hit a vessel carrying drugs, and in what fighting conditions survivors of the first strike were left in. Democrats and Republicans emerged afterward and agreed on three things. Drugs were on the boat. The defense secretary did not say kill them all or issue a no-quarter order. Also, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, and Special Operations Commander Admiral Frank Bradley answered every question and retained bipartisan support and confidence. From there, opinions diverge. After watching video footage of the strikes, Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton met with reporters.
I want to thank Admiral Bradley and General Kane for coming to brief about the strikes on September 2nd, which were righteous strikes. I saw two survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs bound for the United States back over so they could stay in the fight. And potentially, given all the context we heard of other narco-terrorist boats in the area coming to their aid to recover their cargo and recover those narco-terrorists. And just like you would blow up a boat off of the Somali coast or the Yemeni coast, and you'd come back and strike it again if it still had terrorists and it still had explosives or missiles, Admiral Bradley and Secretary Hegseth did exactly what we would expect them to do.
Cotton also said a wide array of military legal advisors watched the attack and signed off.
This was witnessed by literally hundreds of uniformed and civilian personnel at the Pentagon, at Fort Bragg, at other installations. Dozens of them were lawyers. Everybody was watching. Everybody had seen the intelligence and the legal basis leading up to these strikes.
Democrats saw something more troubling. Here's Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons.
I think it'd be hard to watch this series of videos and not be troubled by it. So I don't reach the same conclusion that Senator Cotton does if you're describing it as righteous.
Coons also described what occurred in the second, third, and fourth strikes.
In a second strike, they were killed, and in a third and fourth strike, the boat was sunk.
And this is Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes, top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee.
What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service. You have two individuals in clear distress without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States. Any American who sees the video that I saw will see the United States military attacking shipwrecked sailors. Bad guys, but attacking shipwrecked sailors. Now, there's a whole set of contextual items that the Admiral explained. Yes, they were carrying drugs. They were not in the position to continue their mission in any way.
We turn now to Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill to summarize the day. A lot happened, Nicole. Take it away.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think you summarized it pretty succinctly as well. I mean, look, there was some consensus on the part of lawmakers who did appreciate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, for coming in, Admiral Mitch Bradley, Frank Mitch Bradley, for coming in as well, obviously being the one who carried out those strikes. We did try to ask them questions as they briefed lawmakers, but unsurprisingly, they did not respond to our questions, including those we asked about whether Admiral Bradley Bradley takes responsibility for those incidents. But that being said, there were diverging views over really that point and that report, which emanated initially from the Washington Post about these two survivors following the initial boat strike, and whether or not they were, just clinging out there for their lives, or whether they were trying to get back onto that boat and, cover up whatever drugs they had. So there were some disparities in terms of, lawmakers, as you mentioned, some who felt that the video was disturbing, wanted more clarity around the circumstances, others who feel that Admiral Bradley did what he was supposed to do. That being said, this was just a select group of lawmakers that were briefed, just the leaders of, House and Senate Armed Services, House and Senate intelligence panels, and a few other select lawmakers. So I did have a chance to speak with the head of the Senate Armed Services Committee today, Roger Wicker, and I asked him if he anticipates more briefings, more hearings. He said that he believes that there are other lawmakers who would like to be briefed. So whether or not that transpires in the future remains to be seen. But he did feel relatively satisfied by today's briefing, who he attributed to both experienced and capable leaders. So obviously, these investigations will continue on the part of House and Senate Armed Services. And like I said, whether or not we see additional briefings or hearings, I think, remains to be seen.
Senator Wicker is a key figure on all of this because it was his curiosity about this that led to the briefing in the very first place on a bipartisan basis. Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill, thank you very much. Pennsylvania Democratic Congresswoman and member of the Armed Services Committee, Chrissy Houlihan, joins me now. She was one of 6 Democratic lawmakers with either intelligence or military experience in a recent video that urged service members to ignore unlawful orders. And we'll get to that in a moment. Congresswoman, based on what you've heard today, what is your readout? What is your evaluation of this September 2nd event?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. And put me in the camp of the group that needs to know more and would like to see more. I serve on the Armed Services Committee and on the Intelligence Committee, and so the areas in purview that I have, it spans the entire thing, gamut from where we get the information about whether these are indeed bad guys, as Representative Himes said, all the way to whether or not that this was a justified killing. I very much think that the full committees ought to be able to see this information in these videos and all the information that goes into this. As well, I'll go as far as saying I believe the public needs to see this as well, because I think what we've seen is, for whatever reason, we here in Washington are incapable of having the same view of things. And I think that what I've heard is that these were devastating videos and that these were literally people clinging for their lives to very small pieces of the boat, of the hull of the boat. What clearly other people saw was a righteous killing, and there needs to be truth somewhere there. So I very much hope that the American people, either through the oversight of the Congress, the people they represent, they were elected to represent them, or through their own eyes themselves, can see the truth here.
Congresswoman, how do you evaluate the broader policy of designating cartels foreign terrorist organizations and therefore invoking a kind of 9/11 global war on terrorism lethality to approach any of movement of drugs across international waters?
Sure. I personally don't agree with the justification of this as a war in the same way that 9/11 was. 9/11, importantly, actually went through the Congress. The Congress had an input into that. So far, at this point in time, Congress has had no input into what this president, this administration has decided is a new war. And so for that reason, I don't necessarily agree that this is a justified way of using our military, our U.S. military. But even if you do justify this in the way that the president and the administration has done, this is, on its surface, ostensibly, literally a textbook war crime. It is literally in the books that you do not shoot on people who are sinking in a vessel.
I want to ask you about the video that you and 5 other members of Congress, senators and House members, recorded, because today there was a resolution introduced by 18 Republicans who called it dangerous, seditious, attempting to sow disallegiance, and encouraging disloyalty among members of the intelligence community and the U.S. military. Your response?
That really actually gravely disappoints me and saddens me that my colleagues would do that, would say that, because this is literally 6 members of Congress, their colleagues, duly elected representatives of the people of the United States, who put together a video that literally said what the law is. You should not follow an unlawful order. You should not obey an unlawful order. And for this, the words sedition is employed. That is gutting to me, because I don't believe that there's anything more patriotic than stating the law and asking people to follow it.
I want to play for you sound from 2016. Pete Hegseth is the voice you will hear. Please, on the other side, give me your response.
I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. There's a standard, there's an ethos, there's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would do.
Congresswoman.
Mr. Hegseth, in the past, this was in the past, makes my point exactly. He said exactly what we as a group said on the tape. Secretary Hegseth, in the current right now, has clearly walked away from that as a mindset. He has done everything he can to say that the regular military code of criminal justice, the international code of how we conduct war, is something that should be scoffed at and disregarded. And this is why he is not appropriate for serving in this position right now. This is why he is a hazard, a liability for this administration, for this country, for the Department of Defense, and for the world.
Congresswoman, what was the genesis of this video? Was it about what's going on in international waters off of Venezuela, that you and the other members had specific concerns that people were being given orders that they regarded as potentially unlawful?
No, in fact, that wasn't the genesis. It wasn't any one specific incident, whether domestic or international. It was sort of the buildup over time from the beginning of the administration and the beginning of Secretary Hegseth being at the DOD as he undermined the JAG, the military's lawyers, as he dismantled the IGs, the military's inspectors general, as the administration declared a war that has not, as I mentioned, gone through Congress as it should be constitutionally. We all felt very worried and uncomfortable and felt like it was appropriate to restate the law and also to tell people that people like me are here with experience like theirs and that we have their back.
Have you been threatened since that happened, the video?
The vitriol has been pretty vicious, but I will also say that the positive response has been overwhelming and really, really heartening. And I think that that's something that's the untold story, is how many people who are veterans or family members of veterans or just regular citizens are calling in with their appreciation, and also the conversation that it's started in this country about these issues is, I think, something that's really valuable, particularly now that this issue of the double tap strike has been brought to the fore.
Pennsylvania Democratic Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It took nearly 5 years, but federal authorities arrested a suspect in the case of 2 pipe bombs placed outside the Democratic and Republican National Committee headquarters the night before the January 6th Capitol riot. The story, first reported by CBS News. Here is Attorney General Pam Bondi on the arrest of Brian Cole Jr.
Let me be clear. There was no new tip. There was no new witness. Just good, diligent police work and prosecutorial work, working as a team along with ATF, Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police Department, and of course, the FBI.
Jennifer Jacobs has been doggedly following this story, and I'm so glad you're with me. Jennifer, what do we know about the suspect?
Brian Cole Jr. is 30 years old. He lived with his mom about an hour south of Washington, D.C., in a house in Northern Virginia. He worked in a bail bondsman's office. He wore eyeglasses and was 5'6" tall. Those are key points in the investigation. Now, major sources told CBS News that investigators are looking at some possible writings that have some sort of anarchist leanings. But at the news conference today, investigators declined to comment on what they think his motive was.
Was this suspect on the radar earlier?
It's interesting because it really was a cold case. The FBI built this on several pieces of information that was revealed today, one being bomb-making materials. Interestingly, the FBI was able to track his bank account records and his credit card records, and they were able to determine that some of the things that he purchased matched the items that were in these IEDs at the DNC and RNC headquarters. Proximity. About 3 weeks before this bombing attempt, he made a purchase at a restaurant on Capitol Hill, so they knew he was there, possibly casing the scene. His car, on the night the bombs were planted, one of those automated license plate readers clocked his Nissan Sentra less than half a mile away from the crime scene. At cell phone records on that night of the bomb planting, his cell phone started pinging right near the DNC headquarters and the RNC headquarters. And then those physical descriptions, those physical characteristics, FBI agents were able to look at that surveillance footage from the night of the bomb plantings, and they were able to determine that that suspect in that footage was about 5'7" tall, plus or minus an inch. This man matches that. The person they arrested matches that. Also in that surveillance footage, the suspect adjusts his eyeglasses at times.
The Attorney General and others at the press conference today left the impression that this was a cold case that shouldn't necessarily have been cold. What were they driving at?
That's right. They did attribute this. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, said that this was just the determination of the FBI Director, Kash Patel, and the Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, staying determined in chasing this down. What we do know, Major, is that this really was a cold case for years. The FBI looked into hundreds of tips, and they did interviews. They issued subpoenas for stores that sold the particular kind of tennis shoes that this suspect was wearing in the video, and they just were not able to crack the case. Kash Patel indeed stressed today that this was not any sort of an external tip. It was all just good police work done internally.
Very good. Jennifer Jacobs, I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. The Trump administration immigration crackdown now in New Orleans. Roughly 200 agents making arrests there. Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bovino tells our Katie Weiss that there is no departure date for this particular action.
How many people did you detain today?
Still counting. A lot and still counting.
How long do you plan to be here?
That is a fantastic question till the mission's accomplished.
Camila Montoya Galvez is following all this from the CBS Broadcast Center in New York. Camila, always good to have you with us. Let us know and catch us up on what's going on in New Orleans, also Minneapolis, and we'll get to some other topics in a second.
Hi, Major. Indeed, the Trump administration has deployed several hundred Border Patrol agents to New Orleans to start its latest crackdown on illegal immigration in a Democratic-led city across the country. Border Patrol agents are now tasked with arresting and ultimately deporting some of the individuals they find in Home Depot parking lots and other locations in New Orleans, and then arresting them and processing them for deportation. We are told that Commander Gregory Bovino is again leading this operation, and that Border Patrol is the main agency at the federal level undertaking this effort. Why do I mention that, Major? Because the Trump administration has utilized Border Patrol in an unprecedented way. They have been deployed far away from the U.S.-Mexico border to Democratic-controlled cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, most recently Charlotte, to target people suspected of being in the country illegally. And their operations and tactics have come under strict scrutiny, especially the actions led by Bovino, including those arrests at Home Depot parking lots. The operations have been denounced by local residents as indiscriminate and heavy-handed, even though Bovino has said that the use of force against protesters has been justified. And so this is really unprecedented, the method that the administration is employing to further that immigration crackdown by deploying agents who traditionally have been limited to the U.S.-Mexico border to interior cities like New Orleans.
And what's going on in Minneapolis, Camilo?
Well, a U.S. official tells me that ICE has launched an operation in the Twin Cities region in Minnesota, targeting primarily immigrants from Somalia who have final deportation orders, meaning that federal immigration judges at the Justice Department have adjudicated their cases and found them to be deportable from the U.S. because of civil immigration violations. We know that Minnesota is home to the largest population of immigrants from Somalia, and that is a population, Major, that, as you know, the president often cites and references when he defends that crackdown on immigration. oftentimes in derogatory terms. So it is a population that has been in the crosshairs of the administration, and they are now being targeted as part of that operation. But the administration would argue that they are only targeting immigrants from Somalia who are here illegally, Major, and have final deportation orders.
Camila Montoya Galvez coming to us from the Broadcast Center in New York. As always, thank you very much. So to come on the Takeout, the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Panel hears from non-experts as it weighs future vaccine guidelines, and that prompted criticism from a top Senate Republican. CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder will join us. Also, young Americans say the country is heading in the wrong direction and that it's harder for them to believe in national institutions or that they will get ahead. We dive into results from the newest Harvard University Youth Poll. Plus, it might be Taylor Swift, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Snoop, Queen Bee, or the Marcus King Band, or some other singer or band you might fancy. At year's end, Spotify wraps your tastes together. So what is on Capitol Hill playlist? One reporter did some digging and tells us all about it. Later, the Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. A CDC vaccine panel has wrapped up its first day of meetings, and they were kind of chaotic and had some dimension of confusion while they went on today. The topic was changing the guidance for hepatitis B vaccine. It will vote tomorrow on whether to stop the recommendation for that vaccine in regards to children, very young children. All children are currently advised to receive the vaccine within 24 hours of birth. But Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s hand-picked panel appears poised to recommend delaying that first dose. I want to bring in Dr. Celine Gounder. Dr. Gounder, it's always good to have you with us. There was a lot of confusion and chaos at this first day of the panel's recommendations that are going to come tomorrow. What are your takeaways?
Well, there was a lot of confusion even within that hand-picked panel, a lot of debate about the quality of the evidence, how strong the evidence is, and there is normally a process for how these kinds of decisions are made. What we call an evidence to review framework, and that was not being followed. And part of the reason you have that process is to avoid the kind of chaos and confusion that we were seeing today.
Dr. Gounder, according to my notes, this recommendation first occurred in 1991, and it is being credited with a 99% reduction in hepatitis B infections, and that there is another larger body of evidence about the efficacy of this. So what is it that this panel is weighing, and why?
Well, you have a lot of people who are concerned, who question, why do I need to get my newborn vaccinated for hepatitis B? Because they have a misconception that the only ways that a baby can get infected are through injection drug use, through sex. Some are aware that a pregnant mother can transmit to her baby, but there are other ways in which hepatitis B, a virus far more infectious than HIV or hepatitis C, can be transmitted. And in fact, one of the people I spoke to today, she spoke during the ACIP meeting, Dr. Sue Wong. She herself got hepatitis B from her grandparents who were caring for her when she was an infant. And when you're an infant, your immune system hasn't developed yet. You have really no immunity to much of anything except for what you might have gotten from your mother during pregnancy. And so that is a highly vulnerable period of time if that child is exposed to other caregivers in the household who are carriers of hepatitis B.
This is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. The terminology is ACIP. Bill Cassidy, Republican senator from Louisiana, went on social media today and talked about a gentleman named Aaron Siri, a trial attorney. He said he's going to present before this ACIP panel. And he said as a result, because he believes he's an advocate who's already made up his mind, ACIP has become totally discredited, Senator Cassidy said. They are not protecting children. Who is this person?
Well, Aaron Siri is a trial lawyer who has sued vaccine companies over vaccine safety questions. There, as has Secretary Kennedy, by the way. And there's a lot of concern that these decisions are being made on a political basis, on a financial basis to benefit the lawyers who are suing these kinds of companies. And many of the policies that are being recommended currently may also bankrupt the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which was really geared to prevent frivolous lawsuits, but offer some sort of financial compensation to families who had a poor outcome that may or may not have been vaccine related.
Dr. Gounder, there's a broader context here, and I'd like you to evaluate something that the former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said this morning on CNBC. Let's play that.
They're systematically trying to dismantle components of the vaccine approval process and make sure vaccines won't be available. I think it's pretty clear right now, and I think they're honest about that, quite frankly. I don't think they're trying to hide that at this point.
Agree or disagree?
I agree. In fact, I spoke with another former FDA commissioner, Robert Califf, last night, and he said precisely the same thing. I've been hearing from numerous others who are highly concerned that the pharmaceutical manufacturers will pull out of the U.S. market. These are very low margin, not highly profitable pharmaceuticals. And with the increased liability, with all of the increased burdens that are being asked of them now in terms of repeating huge clinical trials, millions of people, which are really, quite frankly, not feasible, there are concerns that they're just going to say, you know what, we're done. We're pulling out.
Dr. Celine Gounder with the facts and the context, as always. Thank you so very much. Next, new polling on how Trump voters feel about the state of the economy, specifically that word you keep hearing, affordability. Our political panel will weigh in on that and much more here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. New polling reveals that Trump voters are feeling a little uneasy about the state of the economy and affordability. Here, on that topic, is what the president said Tuesday.
There's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. They just say it. Affordability.
Joel, it doesn't mean anything to anybody, and you guys invented it. Did you?
Maybe. You know who he sounds like, actually? I don't know if he'll take this as a compliment. He sounds like Joe Biden. Sounds like his predecessor.
Oh, I'm sure he'll take it as a compliment.
Didn't we just spend the last 4 years with a president, allegedly, who spent all of his time convincing the public that the economy wasn't what they were experiencing it to be? I think if Donald Trump and his team thinks that this is going to age well, it's not. The American people don't like being told what the economy is. They actually like to see people who acknowledge what their reality is and address that.
Ashley, the underlying point the president is trying to make, and there is a little gnat that has been flying around this set all evening, and I'm going to try to catch it before the show is over, ladies and gentlemen. But if I don't, and I do this, that's what it's about. The president's underlying point is inflation was much higher in the Biden years. It has, by comparison, been tamed to 2.5% to 3%. Not great, but not as bad as 9%. And he ought to get some credit for that, and he's frustrated that he hasn't.
Look, when you're explaining, there's a problem. So the bottom line...
When you're explaining, you're losing. That's the iron rule of politics.
Exactly. And so this is going to be our biggest issue going to the midterms. And there has been policies in place that especially will go into effect in
Next
January
year.
with the big beautiful bill, you know, and we have no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. The key is by July, will my family in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania feel like their beef prices are down, that their daily living's down, and that's what people vote on. So we need to make sure as Republicans that what's happening with the economy on the broader scale, especially with the stock market, it's doing very well. But are you feeling it at home? And that's going to be our biggest issues.
And Ashley, if you were...
Gas is good, though.
Ashley, if you were a Democrat, would you cut an ad with that soundbite for the president? Affordability, nobody even knows what it means?
No, there's like 1 million ads made right now. Yes, yeah.
Against the Republicans and against Trump on that.
Totally, no, yeah, for Democrats.
The problem for Republicans is no relief is coming. Donald Trump is not backing off of his tariff war, which is going to make things worse. He's not backing off of his immigration regime, which is going to make things worse and more
Why do you think it's going to make things worse economically?
Well, obviously, businesses. Go talk to a business leader. Go talk to our friends at the Chamber of Commerce. Do they like having lots of labor that supports key industries being targeted by this immigration regime that doesn't make any sense? No, they don't. And it's hurting the economy along with his tariff regime and his mismanagement of the economy more broadly.
Can I just say one thing? I do think some of the policies as a fiscal conservative that long term, they're going to be good for growth. But I think the issue for the midterms, if we're just talking pure politics, it's going to be difficult for November. And that's fine. Listen, I don't believe one way or the other that any party, Democrats or Republicans, all three should be in charge. I think we'll keep the Senate, and I think we'll probably lose the House. And like divided government's just fine.
I'm with it.
Okay, Joel, I know that you feel that there has been an effort within this Trump Justice Department to weaponize things against perceived opponents. But Henry Cuellar was pardoned by the president yesterday, member of the House Democratic Caucus. He was on Fox News with Brett Baier yesterday and was asked this question and gave this answer. Let's listen.
I would tell you also, I did speak against the Biden administration about open borders. My district didn't like it.
And you think that's what this was about?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was weaponized.
His point was that he and his wife were indicted on bribery charges as well as other federal charges under the Biden Justice Department simply because they disagreed on a policy matter.
That's hogwash. And I think Henry Cuellar knows that. Good for him. He has a president that has the same problems that he has. He operates in a way that's dishonest. Just like Donald Trump has been accused of operating in a way that's dishonest. And so Donald Trump sees the enemy of my enemy as my friend. And so he decided to bring Henry Cuellar into this so that he could say that there's a bipartisan effort to go after people who've been targeted by the DOJ in the past. This is not about the merits of the Henry Cuellar case. Donald Trump doesn't know the merits of the Henry Cuellar case.
Ashley, you talked about affordability as a potential Achilles heel for Republicans next year. Related to that is what may or may not happen with extended and enhanced Obamacare tax credits, which expire at the end of this month. Josh Gottheimer, a Democrat, was talking about this. Let's listen.
Having access to health care can literally mean the difference, as you know, between life and death. The House and Senate must work together to see this through. Time is ticking. Time's not on our side. But we know that if we work together, and we'll sit down with anybody, the president, our leadership, anybody you want, we'll sit down with to get something done.
The reason I put that soundbite forward is because today, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, said something interesting is going to happen next week, that there's all these conversations going on, and they're going to roll something out. What does that tell you?
I was very surprised so I've been watching the Congressman Fitzpatrick deal that he's kind of imploded. Brian Fitzpatrick, Pennsylvania, one of my guys. But because he's working with the White House behind the scenes, he's working with some of the moderates, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. I'm watching to see what comes out of that package, but I was surprised this afternoon that the Speaker
Mike
said we may
Johnson has
have
not
something.
sounded that bullish or that leaning forward at all.
Correct.
And suddenly he's like, next week, stay tuned.
He's getting a lot of pressure for that vote because not just moderate districts, but conservative districts too. Do I think that COVID spending should go away in regards to the ACA benefits? Yes. However, so many people have depended on this. It's very, very hard to do, and I have that.
And Joel, the reason I bring up the House Speaker is because he called the White House last week and told them to stop a rollout of something that they were going to put forward.
Bottom line here, the benefit of the doubt that Republicans believe they have on the economy and on immigration, they don't have on health care. The American people don't believe they care about it. They don't trust them on the issue. And they have seen for the last 15 years, they have been trying to systematically take out the Affordable Care Act. Since I was there with Harry Reid actually passing the ACA, they've been trying to undercut it, make it less strong, make it less effective. The American people don't believe that they care about it, and that's the issue that they have on the issue.
We'll see what happens next week. Joel Payne, you get the last word. Ashley Davis. Ashley Davis, thank you so much. I was distracted by the gnat. It happens all the time.
I just wanted to get the last word.
I know,
That's fine, Joel.
Joel gets it. Quick programming note. Tune in Saturday, December 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern, for a CBS News town hall with Charlie Kirk's widow and head of Turning Point, Erica Kirk. It's moderated by CBS News Editor-in-Chief Barry Weiss. The one-hour event will feature Kirk fielding questions from a studio audience about the months since the assassination of her husband, political violence in America, her faith, and much more. That can be seen on CBS News and Paramount+. An overwhelming majority of young people are disillusioned about the country and their future in it, with some doubting they will be as financially successful as their parents. A look at what's driving that anxiety next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout and the Conversation Corner, which I'm happy to say the gnat has not discovered that I have moved to, so we're going to try to keep that momentum going. Interesting new polling from Harvard's Institute of Politics shows that a majority of young Americans pretty gloomy about their future as well as the country's. 13% of those surveyed between the ages of 18 and 29 say the United States is headed in the right direction. 13%. 57%, as you can see, say wrong direction. Jordan Schwartz joins me now. He's the student chair of Harvard Public Opinion Project. Jordan, it's great to have you with us. And because you're from Harvard, I feel like I should intone with some sort of literary reference. So I would summarize this poll as Bleak House or something like that.
It would certainly seem that way. Thanks for having me on the show, Major. This has been a fantastic opportunity to talk about the poll, but certainly not a particularly optimistic poll here. The results across the board, from faith in the country being on the right track to attitudes on political violence, trust in institutions, parties, and even each other really show that young Americans are in a very dangerous and precarious position right now, deeply dissatisfied with the way the world is, struggling with finances, and hopeful for a solution, but not seeing one ahead of them anytime soon.
And how does artificial intelligence, this advertised transformational technology, fit into this array of anxieties?
Absolutely. So if we consider this baseline where 43% of respondents in our poll are struggling financially or barely getting by, that's sort of this level of present economic anxiety. But it goes so much further than that because it also goes into the future as well. And these future concerns could not be more obvious than in the case of AI, where by a 3-to-1 margin, young Americans are more likely to believe that AI will take away opportunities than create them. And I think this is part of a much larger trend among young Americans. You know, we're looking at the future and we have no idea what it holds, with artificial intelligence threatening to shake up the job market, potentially take away jobs, potentially help, but really leaving us in a situation where we don't know what's going on. That's really disturbing for a lot of young people who are just trying to figure out where their place is in the world in the years moving forward.
So one of the interesting questions you have is, what do you view as a survey participant as a source of strength? And I want to go down the answers. 32% colleges and universities. Control room, we can bring that up. 23% immigrants. 12% Democratic Party. 9% Republican Party. Oh, great. Look at this. 6% mainstream media. I are one in that category. That's great Harvard diction for you and grammar. So that's not a lot of strength for those surveyed to look for, to either encourage them about the future or give them a sense that they've got someone to rely on in the near term.
No, it really isn't. And this has been one of the themes across the poll. You know, many of the times when we run this, we spend a while going through the data and we try and come up with 10 or so big headlines, and they'll go in all sorts of different directions. And this fall poll, of all of the ones that I've been a part of, has truly been unique because across every headline we've come up with, every data point we've researched, the fact remains that young people are really disillusioned, really distrustful, really dissatisfied. The one I'd say bright point of light in this poll in terms of trust is when we asked a question about trust in various people and institutions when it comes to vaccine information. Young people actually did display a high degree of trust in doctors and scientists and researchers. But beyond that, politically speaking especially, trust remains extremely low.
Breaking it down really well. Jordan Schwartz, there's no question to me why you are the student chair of the Harvard Public Opinion Project. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Major.
Members of Congress are trusted to make important decisions. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but their trust is there anyway. So what music? It says jams here, but I'm so uncomfortable saying jams and Congress and stuff. Anyway, what music do they listen to while thinking about their obligations on Capitol Hill? Well, a look at some of the lawmakers' Spotify Wrapped information. That's coming up next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Today is National Sock Day. I didn't know if you knew that, but of course, if you're a regular viewer of this show, you know that every day is National Sock Day, and here they go. See, that's a gift from my crew. If you don't know who that is the immortal San Diego chicken on my socks. National Sock Day. All right. Here in the Conversation Corner, we're going to talk about the end of the year and Spotify. There are things you can count on when the year ends. You know, colder weather, Mariah Carey topping the charts, crowded stores, holiday shopping, and the unbridled excitement that millions of Americans experience when they wait for their Spotify Wrapped. That is the personalized recap of what a music listener on Spotify listened to, including their most streamed artists and songs. Thanks to one reporter, we now have a glimpse into what the playlists of congressional lawmakers look and sound like. Said reporter, Oriana Gonzalez, joins us. She is a reporter with Notice. Remember, that's News of the U.S. All right, so you want to know about me? My Wrapped. Put the graphic up. Top genres, classic rock, duh. Jazz blues, singer-songwriter, new wave, funk, top song, Steve Winwood's Valerie. Oriana, what do we know about members of Congress?
Well, it's actually very eclectic in ways that I just didn't expect at all. First of all, Taylor Swift was definitely in pretty much
in there.
Every member Spotify Wrapped. Bad Bunny also made an appearance a couple of times. I was surprised that some members like Nick Begich from Alaska had EDM and electric music always on at all times. And I put it in a playlist. Actually, I put all the songs together in one playlist of all of the member songs. And his songs are in there, and they're very different from every other member's songs, because it'll go from Taylor Swift to suddenly the strongest electronic music you can expect ever.
And I see AOC, Bad Bunny.
Exactly.
Jamie Raskin, Maryland Democrat, Bruce Springsteen, Sarah McBride, Taylor Swift.
Precisely.
And Don Bacon doesn't know what Spotify is, Republican from Nebraska, right?
He did not know, but I went up to him and I said, Congressman, do you use Spotify? He said, I don't really know what that is. And I showed him what I was doing of collecting everybody's top artists and songs. And he looked at me, he goes, well, I can tell you my favorite artist, and that's Rolling Stones. And I was like, thank
Simple
you.
Man, a great song by Leonard Skinner. For those who are not familiar, those of you who have Spotify and classic rock, you'll know what Simple Man is. And you also talked to Senator Gallego, Ruben Gallego from Arizona. There's a graphic we have in the control room. Put that back up. Explain.
So he specifically, I was very interested in him because I know that he likes a lot of Spanish music. So I was like, okay, he'll say something along the lines of Bad Bunny or Karol G. And then as he was showing me his phone, I see that Under the Sea, the Little Mermaid song is in there. And I asked, immediately this stands out. And he said, well, okay, my daughter is obsessed with this song, and we sing it together. Yes. He said that they sing it together when they're doing bath time and then when he's taking her to daycare.
Bath time and daycare. All right, so if you haven't done this, folks, with your Wrapped, and even if you have, you know that it will designate your estimated Spotify age. Mine was 71. Spotify, I'm 63, okay? And I resent, it says don't take it personally. How else can I take it? You said I'm 71. I'm clinging to my 63-year-old status. What age did you come up with, Oriana, for you?
See, I'm 28.
Okay.
I actually got 19.
And how do you regard that? Insultingly or complimentary?
A little bit of both. Very confused. I don't exactly know how we got there. Right. I was definitely the youngest of my friends and of literally every person that I know, including members of Congress. So much to think about for me.
Because what it does is it sort of goes through your list, and if you're listening to something that is somewhat aged, like fine wine, you yourself are given a higher age. I know several people in their 30s or young in their early 30s, late 20s, who got in the 60s and 70s, just because they like. That's not their actual age. It's not even close to their actual age.
I know. I'm very curious because I'm also listening to Fleetwood Mac. Right. I'm listening to Aerosmith. What happened to that? I should have been at least 50. How
willing were members of Congress to talk to you about this?
Very, very. I'm sure you've seen this before, you've experienced this, but a lot of the times I get shut down by members if I'm asking about politics at all.
Right. Contentious issues or things like that.
Exactly.
This was like a lifeline.
Oh,
a
absolutely.
Pop culture lifeline.
They would look at me and say, like, oh, this is actually a question I want to answer. So it was very nice.
How widespread would you say Spotify is among members of Congress? Bacon is a clear example of someone who's not quite hip to it. Is he a Pandora guy or something?
He said good old radio.
Or cassette tapes, probably.
Yeah,
8 tracks.
yeah. A lot of them actually said they use Pandora. Right. A lot of that said, and I quote, good old radio. So it was a little bit of everything. But like, to be quite honest, I was sorry to the members of Congress. I was shocked that they did use Spotify.
Anyone in leadership answer your question?
I tried to reach out. I reached out to Hakeem Jeffries and unfortunately didn't get anything out of it. And
love to know what's on John Thune's Spotify.
Oh, my God.
John Barrasso.
Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all?
James Langford, A lot of Bad Bunny there. No, there's no Bad Bunny there.
I would hope.
Very, very limited. But Bad Bunny, very popular. The NFL knows what it's doing.
That was my top artist.
That is a clear takeaway.
Yeah, that was my top artist, so.
Oriana Gonzalez, thanks so much. That was fun.
Much.
Super fun. Happy Thursday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report coming up next.